We are going to look at the state of MCG today, this broadcast being recorded mere hours before the actual State of MCG address is delivered by its dean. We want to look at gene editing. We did a story not too long ago on CRISPR and the efforts to edit human genes and what that might mean when it comes to diseases and immunity and other health issues. So we'll get the dean to break that down for us. And we need more doctors. We talked about that with Georgia's governor last week, and we'll talk about it with the dean of the Medical College of Georgia. He is Dr. David Hess, and he is back on the set of the Means Report. Dean Hess, thank you so much for taking the time on this especially busy day.
Thanks for having me here.
Well, it's our pleasure. Just for the uninitiated, or maybe those who've lived here forever and don't know, when we think of MCG, we think of a medical college for sure. We think of a place we can go to the hospital and students are likely to observe what's going on with our treatment. So a teaching hospital comes to mind, but it's really more accurate to refer to MCG as an academic health center. Tell me about that distinction.
Yeah, so an academic health center is relatively rare. There's probably only two in Georgia, Emory and us. Mm-hmm. Other states, our population size have more, 4 and 6 in Ohio and North Carolina. But an academic center, academic health, has a tripartite mission, as we always say: clinical care, research and discovery, and teaching. And the research and discovery is usually a big part of it. And the other important part is that they have large residency programs. And so residencies can vary from pediatrics to fellowship programs like interventional cardiology or otolaryngology. And to have all those programs, it's usually found in academic health centers. And so you have the other major part is our faculty that basically take care of patients. They're mostly all employed by the medical school. So a lot of their income will come from clinical income, but they're really employed by the medical school. Mm-hmm. And the dean appoints the department chairs and hires the faculty in collaboration with the CEO of the hospital. But the medical school is really enwrapped and entwined in the hospital. That's what an academic health center is.
How are you able to do all three, clinical research and teaching, without one of those three suffering?
Well, that's the balance. That's difficult. I think Harvard and Mass General was really strong in the research. The research is usually getting NIH grants, which is an art in itself and takes a lot of effort. And you have to have a big research infrastructure. So it's always a balancing act. Mm-hmm. And teaching is really the number one priority. We really want to train good medical students and good residents, but training good medical students also requires training them in research, right? Otherwise we don't advance. We don't make advances in medicine. Most of the discoveries that advance health are done in academic health centers throughout the United States. Mm-hmm. That's where most of it's done.
Talk about that NIH and other funding sources that come from the federal level. Does that eat up a ton of your time trying to apply for that money? And what is the timetable when you say, hey, I need some help, until you get to cash the check?
Well, it is a process. Getting an NIH grant is a real ordeal. And I think the average age of getting your first, we call it RO1, that's an independent research grant, is now in the mid-40s, right? Mm-hmm. So it takes that long. And it's usually, you apply, usually don't get it the first time, you resubmit it. You have a study section of your peers that evaluates the research. But, the funding levels, for example, in cancer are under 10%. So single-digit success factors. Now, in other institutes, they're higher. Right now, in Alzheimer's disease, there's relatively a lot of money because the federal government has earmarked money for Alzheimer's. So some of those grants may be funded, 30% of them are funded. So it also depends what you're trying to get funded. In cancer, believe it or not, is very difficult, one of the most difficult areas.
We'll talk about what's going on at our cancer center a little bit later in this broadcast. First, though, I want to get to the status of our doctors, and especially the ones that were graduating and putting into parts of Georgia, especially rural parts of Georgia. That's a constant struggle, Dean Hess. Are we making any progress?
Very slow, honestly, very slow. We have to do something differently. We can't do what we've been doing. So Georgia ranks about 39th or 40th in physicians per capita, but it's really worse than that because Atlanta doesn't have a physician shortage to speak of. There are pockets of Atlanta where there's a physician shortage, but most of it's outside of Atlanta. So if you go outside of Atlanta, we have severe shortages of physicians in many areas. When I go out on the road to alumni dinners, they always want to know, can you get me a rheumatologist? Can you get me a neurologist? So they're short not just of primary care doctors, but they're short of specialists. And so we have shortages in almost every area of medicine. And the shortages are worse in the southeast and the Midwest in the country. The AAMC just did a study of this. And the other thing, I think when they were doing these estimates a long time ago, when they thought we didn't need physicians, they didn't probably take into account well how the population has grown, the demand for more access and services. As we increase access, we need more doctors. And then in our class this year, 55 to 60%, even higher, of some medical school classes are women now, and they're often taking a little break somewhere in their career or going part-time. So you factor all these in, we have quite a severe physician shortage.
Is this MCG's sole burden to bear, or are other med schools throughout the state helping y'all?
Well, everybody's in this together, but we are the only public medical school, so it's really our burden. But certainly Mercer helps, Morehouse. Emory, I think, more is a national look, but they help. But we really need to get the doctors out. And it's difficult to get doctors out in rural areas, and we'll tell you about some of the ways we're doing that. But they have to flourish, and we talk about medical and physician deserts. So if you go out in a small town and you're the only doctor, who are you talking to every day? How are you not getting burned out?
Right.
How are you financially surviving? Where are your kids going to school? You want your kids to go. Is your spouse happy? So these are all factors that are difficult. Generally, the people that are going to go to rural Georgia are the people that are coming from rural Georgia. So you got to start admitting them to medical school, and then nurturing them up and giving them exposure, and hopefully remitting their tuition to keep their debt down so they can go to rural Georgia.
All right, so you're talking about some of the stuff that falls under the 3+ program. Tell our viewers about that and how it might help serve as an incentive for would-be rural doctors. Yeah,
so the 3+ program is something we've been working on for a while, but really just the last year, though. It came up pretty quickly. It's the most innovation we've had in our curriculum really since 1828. And medical school, for the viewers, is normally 4 years. But the big secret in medicine is the 4th year could be better spent, usually spent doing a lot of interviews, applying to residency programs. A competitive program like orthopedics, you may apply to 60 programs, and then do little stints at each of these places, and then interviewing. So we think the time could be better spent. For some people, it's definitely 4 years is needed, but we want to shrink it to 3 years for students that are committed to going into a primary care residency in Georgia. And that's because this long lead time you need to apply for residencies. We're able to do it if we control the residencies, and they're controlled by our partner hospitals. Now, primary care is broadly defined. It's pediatrics, internal medicine, family medicine, OBGYN, obstetrics, gynecology, general surgery, and psychiatry, and probably emergency medicine in Georgia. That's how it's defined. So there's a lot of choice for the students, but they've got to do their residency in Georgia. And if you do your residency and go to medical school in Georgia, the chance of you staying in Georgia is about 80%, 70 to 80%.
Why? Because you'll fall in love with your job and your
community?
Exactly.
And you get used to the community. You may marry someone from that community. And then if we remit their tuition, we think that number will be higher. So the idea, now we don't have this all funded yet, but it's really resonating with the state and corporate partners, is that if you would go to medical school, we'll remit your tuition if you practice in an underserved area of Georgia, which is almost all of Georgia outside of Atlanta.
Sure is.
And Columbia County, honestly, and maybe Chatham County. And if you work anywhere from 4 to 6 years in one of these underserved areas, then your tuition is remitted.
So 4 to 6, you get your tuition back. Look, when I think about things that I want to be shrunk in my life, my doctor's training does not top the list. How do you manage to get them in and out in 3 years? I know you said that 4th year is non-classroom primarily, but how do you cram it into 3 and they're still good doctors?
Well, there's about 12 medical schools have a 3-year medical school program throughout the country, and they seem to be turning out very good doctors. And you have to just be more efficient with your time. And then Exhibit B would be Charlie Howell, my colleague, who's AUMA CEO, who went to medical school in 3 years and then became chair of surgery and now is CEO of the practice plan, ran pediatric surgery. So he's a good example that you can do this. But there's more and more data that you can do it in 3 years. But you have to be purposeful about it.
Sure.
And we call it more personalized, because most of the students, when we eventually expand up to, we think, 300 students, probably only 50 will go to medical school in 3 years and take advantage of this program. So you're talking about 20% of the class, at most. And so most of them will still go traditional. So the 3+ we call it, the other thing you would do your last year would be to get an advanced degree. Like you could also get an MBA, a Master's of Public Health, come out of medical school with an MD, MBA, an MD, MPH, and the last category, which would be the biggest, is the fourth year they'd be spent doing a year of research or focusing on their area of specialty. So if you want to go into orthopedics, which is very competitive, or neurosurgery, you would spend that fourth year doing a lot of electives in that area, and maybe a research project that would go on longer.
Real quickly on this subject, because it's important, we need to make sure that all parts of Georgia have doctors. Is there any way to target kids? You said that a lot of the times these rural doctors are ones that are from those towns. To target kids, middle school maybe, that look like potential physicians, and do everything you can to retain them and make them come back home.
Well, that's a great idea, starting in the middle school. You know, we have some programs. The C program here, which has been run a long time, addresses high school kids, particularly underrepresented minorities, to try to get them in the health professions. So that's worked very well here in Savannah. But I think your idea of even going out to the middle school schools is a good one. You know, our secret sauce, the strength of our campus, besides our academic health center here in Augusta, is our regional campus system. Yeah. And they're very tied into the community, you know, so yeah, I mean, our Albany campus, our Savannah, Brunswick, Rome, and hopefully soon to be Dalton. Dalton will hopefully be in there with Rome, which will strengthen our Northwest campus. We really have to start in those early years and start getting people to come. Now, fortunately in Georgia, we've got a great university system, right? Mm-hmm. And, you know, the University of Georgia, and that's our farm system, and Georgia Tech and our colleges, and, you know, the Hope Scholarship has helped keep the debt down at the university level. But now you want to keep the debt down at the medical school level, because still our average debt is $160,000 when you graduate.
Good night.
And that's low compared to some medical schools.
You're pleased with the regional model? We're not spread too thin?
No, I think it's the regional model is the best thing we could have.
Good.
I mean, the students go out there, they're not opposed by residents, as we say.
Yeah.
So they get to do the procedures. So it's not uncommon to talk to a student who's been in Brunswick or you know, Albany and has delivered 30 or 40 babies.
I think the reason I ask that is because when I hear regional model, I get fearful that another town is going to steal MCG from us.
I don't think that'll happen. Our roots are pretty deep in this town, and a lot's here. I don't think you have to worry about that. I think we have to have regional campuses because, you know, we need more experiences for our students.
Yeah.
And so there's just not enough in Augusta.
We're going to continue this interview with the Dean of the Medical College of Georgia, Dr. David Hess, in just a minute. We'll talk about gene editing, this cutting-edge research that's going on at the Medical College, also some other exciting things that are ahead, in advance of the State of MCG address that Dean Hess is set to deliver when we come back. Welcome back to the Means Report. We are talking to Dr. David Hess. He's the Dean of the Medical College of Georgia. He's about to, as soon as this recording is over, deliver the State of MCG address, as he does each year, to the folks at the Medical College. And one of the things I wanted to point out as far as a feather in the cap of MCG are your Georgia Research Scholars. And tell me, Dean Hess, if I'm interpreting this correctly, these are folks who do research, who look for cures for diseases, but who also might start companies that flourish from right here at home. Right, right. So the GRA, the Georgia Research Alliance, has, I think, about 65 Georgia GRA eminent scholars throughout the state at Emory, Georgia Tech, so both public and private universities. We have now 7. We've had 3 in the last year, and exactly like you said, you hit the nail right on the head. They have to be good researchers. They have to be well published. They have to be well recognized in their field, and they usually have to be well funded, and/or they have to be able to start a company or provide a service, a core lab like a CRISPR core, a gene editing core, to the state of their research schools. They just had their meeting this week, I understand, and they get together annually. And so it's a great program for us. It's an endowment that the school splits with the Georgia Research Alliance, and then they often buy them equipment, so it's a program that I'm a big supporter of and thankful for. That's got to be something that attracts people to you all, the possibility of not only helping your medical career, but maybe launching something much bigger. Yeah, it is, and so we had 3 the last year. The other thing is they have to be out of state, so I can't steal a sheep from Emory or from Georgia Tech or UGA, so they have to be from out of state. So it is a great resource. So we hired 3 this year.
One is Dr. Cortez, who I think has been on the Means Report.
He sure has, the Cancer Center
Yep.
director.
Yeah, Dr. Cortez, joined us from MD Anderson. He has one of the best publication records of anyone in the university system of Georgia, much less just MCGs. So he runs the Cancer Center. David Mattson is a hypertension expert that we recruited from Medical College of Wisconsin in Milwaukee. He spent his whole career up in Minnesota and Milwaukee, and he's a hypertension expert. He has a program project that's really hard to get around hypertension, so he's bringing a lot of that with him. And he's very, very great to work with. So he's down here. He's a jury eminent scholar. There's no more important disease in Georgia than hypertension.
No, that's your wheelhouse too. I mean,
Yep.
You've been working in that a long time. How are we doing on that front? A lot of people deal with high blood pressure in these parts.
Well, we know more and more about hypertension. We have better drugs. But still, if you look at just nationally, not just in Georgia, about half of people with hypertension still don't have their blood pressure controlled. Because the doctors aren't aggressive, or they're not taking their medicine. Maybe they're taking the medicine at the wrong time of the day. A study just came out that if you take your blood pressure medicine at night, it's better. You have better control and less stroke and heart attacks. So there's a lot we're learning. So we have to get that out into the rural areas eventually too.
Would you say that's number one on your list of things that you focus on research and treatment? Is hypertension, or is it obesity, diabetes? Some of the other big
They're
things?
all important. I don't want to play favorites, but certainly to me, hypertension contributes to so many diseases: stroke, renal disease, heart attack, and even dementia. That I would say nothing exceeds that. Certainly, obesity is important, diabetes is important, but I think as a disease that takes the most toll on Georgia, it's hard to argue anything is worse than hypertension.
It sure is. It's everywhere. Is there a disease or sickness that I just have to leave town to get the best treatment, or can y'all handle everything?
I think we can handle just about everything here. We can't do heart transplants in Augusta, and we would have to send those to Atlanta, for example, Emory. And we don't do liver transplants. But short of that, you can get I think, just about everything done, and a bone marrow transplant in a child. Now, we're going to change that. We're hopefully going to be doing bone marrow transplants. Dr. Cortez wants to do that in children, and we have plans to do that in the future. But today, we can't do that. But we can do just about everything else.
I was fascinated when I saw a recent story. You were involved with it, the CRISPR program or effort that you mentioned a moment ago. Forgive me for not being able to call it, but the CRISPR thing y'all have going on. You're editing human genes. It's amazing. How's that program going?
Yeah, so we just this past year we recruited the CRISPR Corps from University of Rochester. There were two of them: Lynn Gann, who's another GR eminent scholar, and Joe Miano, who worked with him, who's a Harrison Distinguished Chair, and he's a vascular biologist. But they both work closely. Lynn Gann is the one that runs the gene editing core. Right now we're doing it in mice, but it has a tremendous capability to cure human diseases like sickle cell anemia and Duchenne's muscular dystrophy, which are tragic diseases. I've seen so many sickle cell kids later with stroke and then painful crises. Wouldn't it be wonderful if we could clip, like with a scissors, the incorrect part of the gene out and replace it with the right gene? So CRISPR is interesting. This is why we have to do basic science research. It was all found in bacteria. So bacteria, lots of good information comes from bacteria. Bacteria's number one enemy are viruses. They're not antibiotics, really. They're viruses. And so viruses infect bacteria. And to defend themselves against the viruses, the bacteria have incorporated pieces of the viral DNA in their genome. And so when they see the virus again, it says they're immune to it, they copy that and they send out this protein called Cas9. And it basically goes and it cuts that virus's DNA up and chops it up. Well, that's been basically turned around to basically take that ingenious mechanism that the bacteria has and use a guide piece of RNA attached to this enzyme which cleaves the DNA. So it's basically a cut. You cut out the bad piece and put in the good piece. And so it's got tremendous potential.
Is it working in mice so far?
Oh, yeah. Well, Dr. Gann makes mice for everybody, I think, in the country. Everybody's
Yeah.
lining up. He's just got to get down here and get his lab going.
Are human trials years, decades away?
I don't think decades away. I think it's going to come pretty fast. Now, people hear bad things. In China, there were some CRISPR babies made, and those Chinese scientists are in jail now.
Wow.
So you always have to be careful. And so we have to watch the ethics of all this. And Dr. Miano, who came with Dr. Gann, I think ran the ethics committee at Rochester. So, you have to look at this carefully. But no, we're not, it's not that far away. Some genes, particularly sickle cell anemia, where it's in the bloodstream, it's easier to get to those blood cells, through the bone marrow, through the blood. So some diseases will be much more amenable. And diseases with single gene defects are the easiest. The trouble with hypertension and diabetes, there's many, many genes involved. So CRISPR isn't going to cure hypertension, at least right away. It's not going to cure diabetes. So it's not going to cure these polygenic diseases right away. But it's a great research tool too. You can really study disease processes in mice with CRISPR. It's a big help there.
The kind of things that you're talking about sound to me like things that grant givers, the people with the money, would love, and that potential med students would love. Are these things, is this kind of research a big way to attract folks here?
It is. I mean, you have to have this kind of research to really attract the best talented students. But the students are also trying to get through medical school. There's a tremendous amount of information thrown at them. And so to really do research, if you're a resident or a student, it helps to take an extra year off. So in the 3+ program, they could spend the 4th year doing research. It's really hard to do a research project in an afternoon or a couple weekends or even a couple months. It generally takes a year. So we want to start what we call a T program to give residents or fellows a year off to do a research project, then go back to residency. And then our young investigators, we like, the NIH calls these things K awards. These are awards where we protect their time by paying part of their salary and hook them up with a mentor. So you have to have a mentor. I'm sure Brad Means had a mentor at one point.
Sure,
it was. We all have mentors, right? And that's key. So now we've recruited all these great people who are great mentors. So now we have more mentors, and so we can really start doing more of these mentored awards and then bring the next generation up. And eventually we want to focus on the bad health of Georgia, really, because Georgia is a very unhealthy state.
It is.
And if you really look, it's really sad. You go Richmond County down to the southeast to the southwest, it's a very sick state.
Well, the seeds have certainly been planted under your watch, Dean Hess, and I know great things are to come. Thank you for taking time to give us an update on MCG.
You're welcome. Thank you for having me, Brad.
Absolutely. The door is always open.